No, we're quite a ways in now. Really like the bond the team has. It's fun being around these guys. Haven't had camp letdowns like I've seen before. The guys show up to work every day. I think they're hungry, and we're cleaning stuff up little by little. Got a scrimmage tomorrow. We're going to kind of decide the format of that. And then we get a day off, and we're pretty much turning our attention to game one. So a lot of decisions will be made probably after tomorrow. We'll have a pretty good idea, depth chart, not sure when we'll release it, but we'll have a pretty good idea after tomorrow, and then it's about getting the team ready to fly over season play.
Welcome to the Go Big Redcast with Dave, Honky, Boomer, and Redcast Rob.
Welcome to the Go Big Redcast. I'm your host, David Gaspers, and I'm with Honky.
We got Sip here tonight. That's all I got to say.
Also with Boomer.
Well, I'm just here to see if Redcast Rob fanboys out as hard as he did last week for Steve Sipple this week, and maybe see what the fast casual restaurants they decide to dive into deep conversations on.
I listened to that Aaron Sorensen interview, all 2 hours of it, and I don't think it's possible to fanboy out more than what Rob did last week. I am with Redcast Rob.
Oh, I'd like to welcome everybody to this week's edition of This Week in Funko Pops. Today we'll be looking at Thanos as Punisher.
Rob, I'm just going to let you know I'm here on this show tonight, and I'm going to stop all of that conversation because we do have a very important guest, and I'll let Redcast Honky introduce Stephen M. Sipple for us.
Well, yeah, we welcome back to the Redcast, Stephen Sipple, now of On3 Sports. How you doing, Sip?
Really pleased to be with you guys. I know you guys talk about this stuff at a pretty high level, so I'm always a little intimidated, but I'll do my best here.
Well, you know, Rob doesn't talk about it too high of a level, and Mac is right here too. He'll be here in a few minutes, so he's going to run in here.
Where's Mac? Where is he?
He's on his way down here. Right? I live all the way down in Roca, so you know it's a long drive from Lincoln.
Oh yeah, you're down there, yeah.
But before we get going though, let's talk about some of our upcoming episodes and also our sponsors. We went nuts with the fan forum here. So we have 3 of them coming up. Dave from Husker is on Wednesday night, August 17th at 8 p.m., followed by Dr. Rob Zaska, Doc Talk Sports. He'll be here on Thursday, August 18th at 8 p.m. this week. And then a week from tonight, Ravi Mahapatra, Lincoln East assistant football coach, and he grew up next door neighbors with Dr. Tom. So he'll also be joining us on the fan forum. That's next week. As always, the hillvarsity.com/subscribe. Use Redcast, and you'll get $10 off your the promo code, $10 off your annual subscription there. And Alumni Hall, 2 Lincoln locations, downtown on P Street and South Point Pavilions, right behind Barnes & Noble. And Rob, I got my Adidas polo and I got my Adidas hat in the mail.
This is actually the official Sideline collection, and tonight Honky and I are doing our best rendition of Tweedledee and Tweedledum.
So we are officially twinsies, I guess, tonight. Yeah. So thank you there, Alumni Hall. But 2 locations, find them online also. Next up is FSC Edge. Are you looking to make a career change, Redcasters? And FSC Edge is the place for you. Check out their available jobs today at jobs@fsc.com. And last but not least, Smack and Smooch, custom shirts and specialty items. Find them at Smack and Smooch on Facebook and Twitter. You can use the QR code there. Shane and Laura out there know they'd love to hear from you. And a lot of times I'm wearing their shirts, or we have the koozies here, the Go Big Redcast koozies. They make all kinds of great things. So anyways, back to our guest here, and Sip, we got to do this every time you're on. I've got to do the intro. So.
Today we have a smooth conversation with a cool cat.
So find a mixologist to pour you something full of chemistry, because it's time to take a hip sip with Stephen Sipple.
All right. So, Sip, you've had some changes in your life since the last time we spoke. You are now part of the On3 Sports community. Tell us a little bit about that. How's that going for you?
On 3, yeah. Started there June 1, and it's really, guys, pretty similar to what I did, except I'll probably just be doing more football. It's kind of one of the things I wanted to do is um, I just really would like to cover football. I just kind of always liked that at the Journal Star, but when you're the columnist at the sports columnist at Journal Star, you gotta delve into some other things. But at this stage of my life, I just mostly want to stick to football. I will say this though. It's really hard to leave the Journal Star. I always want to make that clear to people. 33 years. It was, I probably don't take a lot of aspects of life as seriously as I should. And I didn't realize how hard it would be to extricate myself. But it was they made it hard. It was hard. And, but I'm glad to be with On 3. It's going well. And you know what? We're heading into it now. We're getting ready to go to Dublin. I'm getting ready to go to Dublin on Monday. So it all feels pretty urgent right now.
Yeah. Last time you were on, you said every day has to feel like a fourth down over there. That's urgency, right?
Oh yeah. I forgot about that, but it's true. Yeah. I mean, that's what you want. And I don't think it felt like that enough. You know what? We contributed to that, I think, us collectively as a media corps and a fan base. I mean, one thing we probably won't do again is give a guy a 7-year deal and say you got as long a runway as you need. I don't think that's a good way to do it. And I think we found out the hard way.
Mm-hmm. Dave, you were going to say something there, or?
Oh, I just wanted to jump on the whole Ireland trip. I'm excited. I've been listening to all your radio show and whatnot. Sounds like this will be your first time over in Europe. You got to be excited, and trust me, Ireland does not look like Gretna.
Yeah, I have this nightmare of getting over there and like driving through Papillion.
There'll be a few things you'll notice. You're like, oh, that's not that different. They still have they have gas stations, and various things, but it will be very different. But I think
thank you. I'm looking forward to that. I haven't been to Europe. The only places I've been overseas are a lot of the strangely enough, my wife made a kind of a Caribbean tour through the years, and so I've been a lot of those islands, but I've never been to Europe.
Sip, it's funny. I always try to figure out who you remind me of, and I work in for a newspaper too, doing the advertising and marketing stuff, and you actually remind me a lot of this guy, Sam Mastari. He's been he covered sports here locally forever, and it's cool always to just kind of hear your passion about that from the newspaper side, about how you actually miss it stuff too, because we used to just sit around and have some of the coolest stories of Colorado sports in general sitting around with Sam. And so I was trying to remember who you reminded me of. And then tonight it just kind of clicked when you were talking about leaving the Journal Star. So I'm stoked to have you on.
Sam Mastari. Is that how you pronounce it?
Yes.
What did he cover?
Everything. And his son was the first 3-time
Greeley Tribune. Is that right, Rob?
It was at the Greeley Tribune. Yeah. And,
right?
The mega paper that is the Greeley Tribune.
Yes, that's right. Now owned by Prairie Mountain Media, the same people that own the Post. But his son was the first 3-time state wrestling champion in Colorado.
Well, let's refocus on the football, Rob.
Anyways,
go ahead, guys.
Well, speaking of media and media access, we always start with tweets of the week, and this was a good one from a few weeks ago that you had. And I only want to highlight on the third bullet point here that you had, which was slap me hard if I complain about media access to Husker football. You weren't the only media member to take that stance, but I appreciate it. I read your article the next day, and you were like, basically you looked at it as we already had as much access as anyone as any place gives to their coaches, and as long as you can continue to have access to the head coach and to the coordinators, that was your big deal. And have you noticed anything up to this point? Has it been much different in terms of your coverage and ability to cover the team so far?
No, Matt, it hasn't. And I did mean that. We get incredible access compared to, I've been doing it long enough, 25 plus years, that it's a lot of anecdotal evidence through the years, but often through the years, writers' mouths would be agape when I told them what we got. They're like, you're kidding. You get that. So it always is startling to me when I hear people complain about it. Like, are you really? I mean, we get actually a ton of access, and it's been good. It was good this month. Now it changed, and that was in reference. That tweet was in reference to the fact that this season we don't get the position assistants. We will just get the coordinators. So Eric Chenander and Mark Whipple, and I believe Bill Bush will be available during the season. Small change in my mind. There was oftentimes, I don't know. I mean, sometimes you would need a position assistant during the season, not all the time. And I just thought, and this was, I know this, I don't mind saying it on the podcast now. I didn't know it exactly at the time that we were going through this sort of rigmarole. But this was Frost's decision, not Trev's. And I don't know why he made it, but I wouldn't be surprised if it's just because he doesn't need his assistants in the position of having to address big picture program questions during what could be a very kind of tension-filled season.
Sure. I mean, it helps him streamline some of the messaging. To clarify, Sip, though, I think this is important for the listeners. To your point, in previous seasons, I've been thinking about this when this whole thing came out, and I'm like, on a weekly basis, you'd only get like one or two of the assistants like each week or something like that. So like you might talk to the wide receivers coach 2 or 3 times a season, maybe at max, right? Because you're kind of rotating through, right? So it's not a huge difference. Yeah.
No, and I don't want to always be I recognize my reputation as sort of being the apologist. I don't think of myself as an apologist. I think of myself maybe as a little too casual. And I just always thought, just like you characterize it, you might get the quarterbacks coached 3 times a season. And there was a couple times where I didn't even bother. I mean, there's other things I had to do. So it's not always all that productive. So I'm fine. The bottom line is I'm good with having coordinator access every week, having head coach access every week, and having player access every week. That's enough. And that's, you always want as much as you can, but I would not, like I said, I don't want to get in the habit of complaining about access. It's been incredible for 25 years.
Absolutely. Looks like we have Mac joining the show, so now things will really pick up.
Mac is getting there.
Hey. I apologize, guys. I did the classic thing where I said I'd get gas when I got up instead of getting it on the way home like I should have.
Only Mac on a fan podcast could actually show up late to a Sipple interview.
I totally understand, Mac, actually.
Well, Sip, one of the things I want to highlight one other tweet here of you, and I think this is a really good one here. And it was on Mickey Joseph. He's helping Nebraska's program, if only by telling it like it is. Players need to practice through minor injuries. Every freshman who comes along isn't the greatest recruit ever to grace Memorial Stadium. Good messages from Mickey. Love it. That was from August 10th. I love that message too. I mean, that is something that, look, I can be a very optimistic fan, and I am. And yet at the same token, I mean, there's a difference between just blind optimism and Kool-Aid sucking that everything is great. No, you don't go 3-9 if there aren't some things that need to be fixed. And even when you get some really good recruits, and we've gotten some good recruits, and I think we've made some good changes, but yet still, people got to be held accountable, and people make mistakes. They need to be told it. And I appreciate the message of that. Was there anything in your specific that you were thinking about as you wrote that? Was there something that you said?
Yeah, there are 2 very specific instances, Matt. That day he had talked about, and it's okay. I always almost got to apologize for this. Mickey addressed Omar Manning specifically. And, he was asked a broad question, Mickey was, in his availability about have the receivers responded well since you were sort of critical of their performance as a group in a previous practice. And Mickey said, yeah, they've stepped up. And then he just went right to Omar. He said, Omar Manning has practiced. He's now practiced twice in a row. And so it was very, right away, Jimmy Watkins of the World Herald. And I was like, what's that supposed to mean? and Mickey just was very blunt. He said he's practiced 2 times in a row. And then a few other questions were addressed, and we had to go back to it because still it was like, what are we talking about here? Because I sort of knew, like you guys would probably know, but you need to hear it. And he said Omar needs to practice through Nicks. We're not going to, at the University of Nebraska, they're not going to send out players who are hurt to practice, but you got to practice through bumps and bruises, and they're trying to get Omar to do that more. So that's a good example, right? I think it's okay, especially with a player who's a senior, a grown man, 23 years old. You can say that. I mean, I think that's in bounds. And then the other part of it was Mickey was asked directly how the freshmen are progressing, and he said they're not progressing particularly well. So he said they're used to, they've grown up where they're used to being the stars of the show, and they don't understand necessarily that you got to play every single play now. It's a common thing. You don't always hear coaches address it in that blunt of a manner, but he did, and I thought it was refreshing. And I think this program needs a little bit of that. I believe this program, and it's like a lot of programs, it does tend to exalt incoming freshmen to where I think there's a feeling sometimes among some of them that they've already kind of made it. They haven't done a thing, but they already feel like they have. And our excitement, there's nothing negative necessarily about it. It's just we're excited as a fan base, as a media corps, but I think that can work against you a little bit, and I think that's what Mickey's was kind of alluding to. So, and it's not like Mickey's been the only coach to make these sorts of statements. Bo used to. I mean, Bo used to be very, very like kind of taken aback by the level of hyperbole that's sort of bestowed on these recruits.
I remember one recruiting class where he didn't even mention the scholarships. He just went straight to the walk-ons. That was in February. But Bo wanted to make such a point of not talking about the
he always thought it was sort of odd. But anyway, that's where that came from. And then that tweet, there's a typo in there, by the way, which always concerns. I fired it out really fast. It just was one of those tweets. I don't do that very often, where it sort of came to mind as I was contemplating what he said, and I liked what Mickey has to say. Mickey's very hardcore.
Well, let's go into scarlet-colored glasses here,
okay,
and we can talk about the state kind of the program right now, this first part, and then we're going to end the second part talking specifically on the defense, do a defensive breakdown. Last week with Aaron Sorensen of Hale Varsity, we did the offensive side. But right now, I guess just in terms of timing, yesterday was the last day of fall camp. Fall camp is done. Today was a day off, and then tomorrow,
the
Tuesday,
hay is in the barn.
The hay is in the barn. Tomorrow, Tuesday, whatever that is, August 16th, that is officially the start of Northwestern prep.
Yeah.
And so I guess just take us through right now, kind of where are we at right now, August 15th. We're transitioning from camp to Northwestern. Where's the team at kind of in your eyes?
I'm sorry, the last part. Where's
the team at in your eyes right now from what you've seen and heard and talked to the coaches and all that, talk to the players?
Well, Matt, here's the deal. I think they had a good camp. And if only that there were no major injuries. I mean, 2 frontline guys, Dakotas Crawford suffered an unfortunate injury, major knee injury, but no frontline players suffered major injuries, and they were very cognizant of that even yesterday. I think they got out of camp in a pretty good place mentally and physically. They did that kind of interesting, I've never seen this, where they went 3 days on and 1 off, 3 days on, 1 off, and they're going to continue that right into Ireland. Maybe that helped. The 2 scrimmages I thought were, and I didn't see them, I want to be very clear on that, but I talked to people who did, and they seemed like they were productive on both sides of the ball. There's definitely guys that have emerged. I don't think there's been too many disappointments. I mean, Tommy Hill's been I'd say a big story during camp.
Okay.
O'Shawn had a big scrimmage yesterday, a very sort of eye-opening scrimmage where he was, that type of player that you envision. I mean, I've never heard anybody say he's like Randy Gregory, but kind of trending toward that sort of player.
Steve, any talk of the running back separation?
Yeah, definitely. And I talked to somebody about, I would say a source today about that when I was, in fact, I was driving home to do this. Separation, I'd say Anthony Grant has separated to a degree. I mean, I think he'd be if they were to play today or tomorrow, he'd be the starter.
Mm-hmm.
There's not a big separation, but that's definitely a development but you know what? I have the depth chart sitting right here when they came out of the pre-camp depth chart, and he was number 1 on that.
Mm-hmm.
I'm sure Frost would just love that I'm saying that, but let me look. Yeah, he was 1 going into camp, and Yant was 2, Ramir was 3, Irvin 4, AJ Allen 5,
okay,
Emmett Johnson 6. Now, what I would say now, it's Anthony Grant, but I'd say Irvin made a big move.
Oh, good.
Yeah, Irvin made a big move and would probably be in that 2 slot, or maybe an or with him and Yant. And then Ramir's gone. Ramir's interesting because he's now almost equal parts running back and slot.
Yeah.
So you'll see him a lot. And then another development, I'd say a pretty sizable camp development is AJ Allen. Where I've been told he's their best open field runner. I'd be surprised the 2 freshmen that I think would exceed that 4-game redshirt stipulation would be Ernest Hausman and AJ Allen right now. I don't know if there's one in there, but there might be.
I know Jim in Minnesota. Jim in Minnesota is going to be happy to hear that about. Yeah, right there. He's an AJ Allen fan, so for him to hear that, I know.
Hey, Sip,
I don't know about that, Jim. That's I haven't watched him in practice. Back when Amon was playing, we did see a lot. They would let us go over there at that time it was pretty funny. There was when Amon was a freshman. Now was that would that have been no, that would have been Tom, right? Was that Tom? Yeah. My memory's starting to escape me, which is a little scary, my wife says. But okay, so Amon was a true freshman.
95 would have been his freshman year.
Yeah, that's Tom. Yeah. So I remember that practice very well because the media, there wasn't much media for one thing. There's only 4 of us. And I was standing on the field for some reason. I was like way too close to it. And I remember when they first put Amon with the ones. And it was like, okay, that's pretty big. He's a freshman. He's with the first team offense. Now, I don't know about AJ Allen if he's like Amon Green yet. He might be. I'd be a little surprised if that's the case. But the fact that he's sort of established himself this early is a great sign.
That is
a great sign.
Hey, Sip, I got a question about Irvin because I can't remember if it was you that was talking about it or somebody else because I listened to all those shows later on his podcast. And talking about one of his biggest issues last year was his lack of size, right? Because he was a young kid and he just
that wasn't me talking.
Okay. Okay. Well, and they say that this year he's gotten into better physical shape as far as just like hitting the weight room, hitting the program, doing everything he's supposed to be doing. And I'm curious, do you think that he's emerging like that because of that, or is it a lot of it have to do too with the style of offense that Whip's going to be running this year?
Yeah, that's a good question. The size, I thought he was fine last year. Style of offense, he's definitely a downhill runner. And I think he would benefit from being under center. But I think he could play regardless. Here's the deal with him. And this is what he's told me. I interviewed him this summer. He's definitely a rhythm running back. And so he says it might take me a little while to find that rhythm, but once I do, it'll work. Now, here's the thing. And what I always say about Gabe Irvin is when we were at Oklahoma covering that game, I'm sitting with Parker and Chris Basnet, Parker Gabriel and Chris Basnet. And at the time I said, Irvin's fine. I'd never talked to him at that point, but I said, he's settling into a rhythm. He didn't have big numbers before his knee injury, but he was going to go for 50 yards on that carry. If you watch it. And that's what he says. He's going for 50. And I told those guys, he's starting to find, you can tell he's confident. He's running more. You can just see it. You guys can see.
Totally agree.
And that's why it was so unfortunate when he blew that in that play. And he did say, he said, yeah, he goes, I did. I was starting to feel comfortable. So he's a freshman. That was the fourth game, right? Third or fourth game. And he, so I'm excited to see what he's got. When I talked to him, I've said, when I talked to him this summer, he was legitimately like a horse kicking a stall. He was so jacked. He just wants to play so bad. And you know what, guys? One of the things this summer, I did interview a lot of guys. They have a lot of just a lot of good kids and kids that are here ready to roll. I mean,
100% agree.
I think they have a good bunch of guys whose heads are in the right spot. They brought in, I'm telling you guys, you've seen enough interviews with O'Shawn, probably, maybe even Wynn, maybe Devin Drew. They didn't bring in clowns now.
No.
These guys are serious dudes, and here for good reasons. They did a great job in the portal. I mean, they did a grade A job of going and getting guys.
Let's go. Let's go.
Sip, when we had you on back in March, we started to kind of try to do some projection stuff, which albeit that's way too early. It wasn't even spring ball yet, all that. But, we were trying to pick the first 6 games and all that. But a lot's happened, obviously, since then. And
a lot always does.
I'm showing some other, here's some tweets from some other people here. Brett McMurphy had us in his preseason top 25. Here, this Will Mead guy says, Nebraska -12. Nebraska plays Northwestern Ireland. I think Nebraska is this year's Michigan State. They will surprise everyone, win the Big Ten West. Frost finally has his QB in Texas transfer, Casey Thompson. Adam McClintock, who we've had on the show, College Football Matrix. He had us originally at 7-5. Now he has us at 8-4. And this is him using his analytics, which in the past, his analytics would have us at 3-5 a couple years ago, and 6-6, 5-7, that kind of stuff. So using the same numbers. My point behind all this is it's creating this. There's starting to become a narrative of 7.5 is what Vegas says, but geez, 8-4. I mean, the projections are starting to get higher, and it's not just coming from Rob, who I guess I'll give Rob this. I'll give this Rob too. Rob did change his Twitter handle here to whatever 3.3%, which is our chance of going 15-0 according to College Football Professor. So, I guess do you feel some of that same compared to when we talked back in March, where you were very hesitant to want to even give wins or losses? I mean, are you feeling comfortable when Nebraska's making a bowl game? We're definitely getting that 7 or 8 wins minimum. I mean, where are you, or are you like, no, let's cool that. So where are you at?
Well, I mean, it's that discussion evolves in my mind. And one way it would evolve one way or the other is camp and getting through it. What's the injury situation look like? You guys have been following it for a long time. There's been times when they've suffered some pretty debilitating injuries in camp. I mean, like Quentin Castile, I remember when that happened, I thought, oh, that's not good. They had backs at that point, but they didn't have anything like that happen. I don't know. That was a random one, but you know how it is. They've had they'd have guys go down, or just camp was rocky. Something would happen. There's so many instances that here's an instance. Bill Callahan approaches the media corps and tells us that Harrison Beck is not around and they don't know where he's at.
That's right. I was thinking of Doug DeBose back in the 80s. Didn't he get a knee injury in preseason?
Yeah, he blew out his knee. You're right.
Yeah, I'll never forget that, watching the 10-11 news and listening to that and thinking that our season was over.
Oh, you guys, if you stop and think, we can probably almost go year to year. And it's always, God dang, during the bowl during the Pelini era, camps were ridiculously rocky. It was almost a nightmare at times. But you had the Bubba Starling one year. You had that kid from Millard blow out his knee, and the World Herald guy reported and Bo blew a gasket and take us all out of practice for about a week and a half. No interviews, no nothing. So that's what I'm talking about. Nothing like that though. So like it's been very smooth from that standpoint, and that affects the way I look at it. I'm just like everybody or a lot of people in that I'm tempted to pick 8, but I just can't. You just get burned so many times that I'm not going to do it. I just say 7, but I feel pretty safe at 7. And here's the deal. They're not great. They don't have great talent. They don't. It's good though. And is
it better talent than a year ago?
I mean, I think
I asked that. We had Michael Severe on back in June, and that was his thing right away. Was he goes, we've got better talent, just right off the top. We had a pure talent discussion, and his take was we're a more talented team. Now, whether talent leads to wins or not, that's another discussion. But right now, just talking pure talent, he was like, and he went kind of across the board. And we used one of his tweets, and that he had said that and it was defensive line and linebacker and wide receiver. I mean, you name the position group. It's better is what his thoughts.
Yeah, I might not be quite as emphatic as Michael because they had 2 second rounders. I mean, those Jurgens and Cam Taylor-Britt were good players, and still he's really playing well in the Miami camp. By the way, I think I think still he might make that.
More still in.
JoJo was getting rep with the second team defense in Indianapolis this weekend, so that was pretty nice to watch.
Yeah, and like I said, Stilly I think could make that 53 in Miami. I don't know if I sign off on it quite as emphatically. I think across the board though they're pretty good. Like, but you saw though what Jerry DiNardo tweeted when he got to Maryland, and that was I think the 5th stop on the BT and bus tour, and he said Maryland was the most talented team they've seen, and they've been at Nebraska. So you want to. I don't want to go too far. I like what they have, but they're not so good that they're going to be able to have letdowns and expect to beat good teams. I mean, I just think come on. What I'm getting at here is if they're going to get to 8 or 9, they're going to have to win close games. That's what it's all about to me. That's what this whole the whole discussion has become about to me. You got to win close games because you're going to play a ton of them. You got to figure out how to do it. So you got to tighten a lot of things up. Whipple's alluded to it. I think Whipple doesn't talk about it that much, but I think it's very much part of the reason he's here. And I think they've looked at it very closely. He's talked about late game situations and guys having a better understanding of what they need for a first down late, be able to understand clock and where the ball is and what you need to get done, where the kick line is. They've talked about that. Just little things that a lot of the players just don't. None of them are all that well versed on it. You got to coach that, and I think to me, they're pretty comparable to a lot of the Big Ten teams. Are going to have to win close games. That's what it comes down to.
Yeah. Hey, Rob, Boomer, what do we have right now for some questions? We probably want to get to some of those before we get to defense here.
Yeah, here's a quick one from Fogway. Sip, you've seen Osborne and Solich's practice intensity. How does Frost's compare from what you've been able to see?
It's intense. Yeah, I'm going down the road. I mean, come on. I mean, the Osborne years were ridiculous. They were. It was
unfair.
It was. I mean, that's the. Fortunately, and unfortunately, I was able to see a lot of that, and the standard got so high, and it was a different time too. They couldn't practice like that now. They're not even allowed to practice like that now. I always tell people, there's vivid memories I have when they would do the goal line drill. I was pretty young in the job, and when they would get in the goal line drill, I didn't feel comfortable. Because it was violent. I mean, it was legitimate violence playing out before your eyes, and it was eye popping for me.
That's amazing.
They wouldn't even let the first string running back in there, for fear he wouldn't come out alive. And it was so that you don't see a lot of that. And even that but that carried into the Callahan years. They still practice. They could still beat the hell out of each other in 2005. And, I saw Richie and Carricker go at it one time. That was illuminating. And they stopped the practice. They started swinging helmets, and they had to stop the practice. Those are things I remember. I remember Randy Gregory and Alex Lewis going at it hard enough that it got so intense they had to pull Alex off the field for the day. I don't know if you see that kind of stuff anymore. But I've seen just 2 practices, 40 minutes. It's intense. It looks like it should to me.
Do we have some intensity from the O-line? Because some of the guys you just mentioned there, O-linemen, and that's a question I've had with some people I've been talking with too about, that is an area where we really need to, whether it is the incognitos or you go back to Rayola's, where's that leader? Where's that guy that if guys are jumping offside, someone's in their face? If guys are making mistakes, a lot of times from the offensive line, you need some kind of vocal leadership. Do you see somebody on the line right now being that?
Yeah, Corcoran. Yeah, he's
Corcoran is.
Yeah, Turner's the guy that they would turn to in those situations. I like that group. They don't have a star. They don't have a Donovan. They don't have a Donovan Raiola or Richie, but they do have. Turner could be that guy. He's just. Last year he didn't practice much in August, and just never. He wasn't very confident because his body wasn't where he wanted it to be. He's fine now. He just had a concussion. Is all I say all he had a concussion, so he missed some days, but he's been back for the last 3 practices.
3 practices.
Yeah, he's
what's interesting about the O-line, you hear that maybe that they don't have a star there, but I guess, and maybe this goes back to what Mickey Joseph talks about with it doesn't matter what you're recruited and you got to prove it, but that O-line has 3 top 100 recruits on it. I mean, you'd think if it's just about pulling out
and they don't really need to be amazing for us to win. If they were just serviceable last year and wasn't a detriment with the penalties and the holds, all that.
Don't lower your standards. They need Richie and those guys we talked about, Richie and Raiola and Finotti. Those guys were not just serviceable.
No. I'm not saying that. I'm saying this year's team.
You need some guys like that.
Sip, your radio show, you were talking, I think one of your segments today was titled does the season pretty much hinge on the offensive line play? I was going to save this question for our defensive talk, so maybe we can pivot, Honky. But
here, let's do that.
Okay.
I had one.
Yeah, I'll set you up though. Is that the conversation you were having was about how maybe the offensive line might be better run blocking. You're hearing this from the coaching staff, and they're struggling a little with the pass block, right? And also, I've heard that maybe Kevin Williams Jr., Rob's good friend who was on the show, might be pushing Benhart a little bit, and Honky's been very consistent saying, Benhart is kind of a key here on whether he is going to make this happen. I guess my thought on pivoting the question was maybe it's the D line is actually that good in causing some of these pass protection issues, but are you concerned a little bit with the pass protection and maybe how that dictates how they call plays this year?
Yeah, I am. I mean, I think that has been a concern in camp. Now, they are really strong on the edge, though, as we've said, and they are legitimately strong. O'Shawn's, he's capable, I think, of 7 to 9 sacks, and Garrett Nelson's playing the best football of his career, and I think he looks more and more like an NFL player to me. Tanner, man, I hope to God they are creative and find ways to get Caleb Tanner going, because I mean people are always like, Sipple, you think way too much of Caleb Tanner. I do. I think a ton of him. That guy can play. He's just undersized in the Big Ten, trying to put his hand in the ground and play against those 6'6", 310 pounders. He gets caught up in the wash, but there's ways you can use him. So to answer your question, yeah, they have struggled in pass protection a little bit, but it's not been alarming. And when I get into that, make that distinction between pass blocking and run blocking. What I'm talking about is if you just look at this group, it looks like a run blocking group. The tackles are mammoth. Okay, like a lot of NFL tackles, you'd say, well, Sip, come on, there's 6'7" tackles, 6'8" tackles. But some of those guys look more like basketball players. These guys are mashers. They're big, thick, heavy-legged guys that look like run blockers. Now, I'm not saying they can't pass block. I think they can, but I don't know that's their strength. I don't think Bryce Benhart's strength is a pass blocker. I think he's a run blocker. Matt's right, too. Benhart's the key. If he can hold down the right tackle job, that enables them to put Corcoran at left guard. And I think they're best with Prohaska at left tackle, Corcoran at left guard. And you have the two grown men, Hickson at center and Bando at right guard. And then you got Benhart. So I like that. I don't love it, but I think they can be okay. That's the key. Don't we always say offensive line's the key? People always say that, but here's the thing: in some years, it's a higher degree than others, and I would say this is a year where it's pretty high degree. Where that's
Hey,
well,
hey,
let's continue. Oh, Rob,
I wanted to pivot it towards the defense and some of your notes from the scrimmage this weekend too, and I'll just read back what you wrote because it goes back. You brought up Adam Carricker earlier, and I talked with him this summer and about the defense as well. And so I just kind of wanted, and you said something in your notes, and so I wanted to kind of get a little bit more emphasis from you. You said the defense continues to come together nicely. It was strong today, I'm told. It has it's had a good camp. You'd likely will see a lot of creative looks and formations from Eric Chenander. And that's one thing Character said too. He said it doesn't matter if they go 3-4 or 4-3 because you're going to see him mixing it up and disguising a lot of defenses. And can you talk a little bit more about that, like what you've heard, what you've seen from them in camp on that sort of stuff?
Yeah, and first of all, guys, I want to say something here before we go on. I really appreciate the fact you read this stuff.
I subscribe to On3 because of you, man.
Well, I can tell you guys, I mean, I'm not just talking about reading my stuff. You read stuff, and I appreciate that. And you guys pay close attention, and you listen, so I like that too. I mean, the big question, and actually Sam McEwen asked Eric Chenander early in camp, would you use O'Shawn Mathis and Caleb Tanner and Garrett Nelson in the same set? You know, would they be maybe all three down linemen in a set? And he said he didn't say no, and he basically said yes. And of course, that's what they're going to do at times. I mean, you'll see O'Shawn Mathis, Garrett Nelson, and Caleb Tanner on the field at the same time. I would guarantee it. So that's part of the creativity. I wonder what else is. I don't know. When I think of the creativity, I think of Tanner, and then I think of guys like Demario Williams and Eric Martin, and the way they moved those guys around and got pretty creative with them, and it was really beneficial. I mean, that year, remember Eric Martin, the Pelini era, and they didn't have a big time pass rusher that year, and they had to figure something out. And what they figured out was Eric Martin could do some things. I think he came out of there with 8 sacks that year. And I hope they can do something like that with Tanner. If Tanner could get you 8 sacks, man, I mean, that would be great. As far as that defense goes, look, the edges, what this comes down to me is another distinction. I'm pretty sure you're going to see the strongest pass rush we've seen in a while. But teams will negate it. They'll minimize that damage if they can just run it at Nebraska. That's what I would do. I mean, I'd just say, well, we're not going to worry about it. It's going to be third and short a lot, and those guys are on the edges. We're just going to beat them in the middle, and that's where I hope they hold up. Now, I think they feel pretty good. I mean, I'm talking about their coaching staff that they don't. I've talked to them off the record. They feel a little better than I thought about that whole picture inside. Now time will tell, but they're probably a little better than I thought going into camp. I feel better about it than I did going into camp. They held up well in camp.
Well, you have Hutmacher and you've got Robinson and Wynn and Colton Feast. Here's a little video of Drew and his first day there about a week ago, now back on campus too. So there's a little bit of depth on the interior side there to man those two positions. We're talking defense here. And depth chart, Sip. This is what we kind of have as our depth chart. And
okay, I'm looking at the one I got. So let me see how you do here.
Sure, you can see how far. I don't like using or, but I had to use or with O'Shawn and Caleb there.
Yeah, that's fine.
Robinson and Wynn, although I think Feast could be up there
I'd
too.
Put Feast in there right now, and maybe, in fact, I just got a text while we were sitting here. I don't mind saying this from a former player. Said Feast is their best lineman.
Is he watching the show right now? That's what I want to know.
I wonder if that's what he's doing.
That would be great. And can you tell us who it is?
No.
Rob wants to drop another name.
I don't want to drop the name. I want to just everyone to know that.
I'll tell you one thing.
Former players, we're the podcast. Former players listen.
Yeah, this guy. I would listen to this guy about any football matter. And he said his original text was. Feast is their best D lineman. He said, rephrase that, most consistent and therefore most productive. I really like him. He's a great story, Colton. He's a tough dude now.
And think of that. That's a UTN walk on. Here's Luke Reimer, another walk on. Again, for the people that the walk on program's dead and all that, we're talking two guys that would be listed on the left column here. Nick Henrich. Now that Nick spot,
you got that.
I've seen now. I have Chris Klarvik here, but here I'll read something that you wrote the other day, Sip, and you go. I'm told Nickel Isaac Gifford is having a great camp. Gifford. I would say the job is his at this point. Both Javen Wright and
that'll be Gifford.
And the crazy thing though is I have heard and read different things about all three of those. Javen Wright, Kolarevich, and Gifford. I'm gonna trust you on this one here, and I'll move.
Trust me on this one. Trust me on this one. Gifford will be Nickel.
I'll move Gifford up to that. But the point is, I guess I'll look at that as a good sign that I'm hearing good things about three different people at that same position. And that's one of those positions that, at least from a differentiator, kind of like what you said with like Eric Martin 10 years ago, we didn't have a lot of those the last couple seasons. And JoJo, that position at least was something that created some differentiator for it.
It was a nice element.
Yeah. And, be interesting to see there. And then in the defensive backfield here, we have Quentin Newsom, Tommy Hill. Tommy Hill, I mean, we just seem to hear so much about him, the transfer from Arizona State, and then Miles Farmer and Marquise Buford at safeties.
Safety spots.
Yeah, you got it. I think the only ones you'd have to switch there, Kolarevich and Wynn. Colton will be in there. He's on. I mean, I'm looking at the pre-camp depth chart, and he was number one, and as was Gifford. And Gifford has had a really good camp.
You had a question, or you made a statement here, and I'm a big believer in the 4-3 as a front. I guess I've just been saying that all off season. When we talked with Damon Benning one time, and we were like, isn't it true that you could actually need less defensive lineman bodies in a 4-man front than a 3-man front, because all three guys have to be a big body there. Here, in a 4-man front, between Feast and Robinson and the whole combination of Hutmacher and Wynn and Drew backing them up. So you have a rotation. You got to have two guys in the middle that can just plug up guard to guard. And so I've heard people say, we don't have a Damian Daniels anymore. They're right. We don't. But Damian Daniels, you needed a Damian Daniels in a 3-man nose tackle, 0 guy right on the center. We don't have that right now. And that's one of the reasons I'm more comfortable than ever playing a 4-man front and having those moving O'Shawn and Nelson up, into an end spot.
Yeah, I got you. I hear you. I'm not completely. I don't dismiss the notion that Nash Hutmacher could be that guy right now. He hasn't made a tackle, but I think he's ready. I hope we're pleasantly surprised. I don't know that I'll be all that surprised. They got some tough kids, and he's one of them. I think he can hold in there pretty well, and he doesn't have to. He doesn't have to be a big time playmaker. He's just got to hold firm, and I think
he's got to be a body in there.
Yeah, he can. I think he can be. In that Damian Daniels mold. Damian was active though. Damian had 33 tackles last year. That's good. That's good in that position.
Oh, he was
he was at times. He was moving. He moved guys. the difference, Nash might give you more snaps. I mean, this was Daniels couldn't play more than 30. And I think Nash might be able to give you more. He might have to give you more.
Well, here's from On 3, they did a top 10 linebacking core, and Nebraska, they had Nebraska the 9th ranked linebacking core in the country. Now, what's interesting is when we talked to Brett Ciancia at Pick Six Previews a couple weeks ago, we were breaking down his defensive position charts, and he had D line and linebacker, and we're like, well, where do you put Nelson? Where do you put Tanner? Where do you put O'Shawn? Are they defensive line? Are they linebackers? And Brett's actually, like, for his preview magazine next year, he's like, I may just get rid of that. I may just call it front 7 because I'm running into this with so many teams running 3-4, 4-3 that it just mix it together and just call it front 7. But at least what On 3 is saying there, and Dave, I think you said the same thing. Phil Still had the linebacking crew, ranked, I think, 13th in the country.
Yep.
I mean, there's some accolades. Again, we're trying to find the Kool-Aid that isn't flowing from within here, and there seems to be some coming from national, ranks and outside that see that linebacking core definitely is something to be built around.
Yeah, it's always interesting, isn't it? Because we're very myopic. We fixate on one team. We know all their flaws, all their strengths. So you do kind of have to remove yourself, and it is good to get that sort of perspective. I try to zoom out a lot, which I'm pretty good at it, actually, and I zoom out of a lot of things. But I do like. Okay, I mean, again, there's always these distinctions. When I think of their linebackers, I mostly think of their inside linebackers because now they're using edge guys, and I think of Tanner and O'Shawn and Garrett and Jamari Butler and Gunnarsson. Different position. I focus mostly on those inside guys, and I do like them. In fact, Reimer to me is sort of a hidden, amazing story. Maybe you guys know. You guys know a lot. It got by me though that he played all of last year hurt. I mean, he got hurt in August. He never was healthy last year and made 108 tackles. Now, he did get pushed around. They got pushed around at times, those two inside guys. They had good years. Luke had 108 and Henrich had 99 tackles. But if you're just real, if you go back and watch, they were getting pushed around a little bit in the run game at times. They're tougher than hell, though. I love them both. That those kids are the kind of kids you got to have. They will do anything they can. Neither of them are getting pressed. They're their starters. They're a little rare that way. They don't have to worry about their jobs. They're the guys, but that doesn't bother. They're not the kind of guys where that would affect them negatively.
Sip, we had a question there, and Boomer, can you put that back up about the inside linebacker depth? And it was just someone asking, can you talk a little bit more about like who do we have behind Henrich and Luke there? Yeah,
there's 3 guys in that discussion. Ativa Maga Clements has had a pretty good camp.
That's good.
Those guys, mainly Luke and Nick, talk about him. And, he came here from Diablo Valley Community College. Barrett has said he just blitzed every time when he was at Diablo.
Northern California, great.
All they did was blitz. He had to learn how to play.
NCAA football.
Yeah, he had to learn how to play, and he has. And Ernest would be I think Ernest Hausman might ultimately be number 3, kind of a battle with those guys. And then
Columbus guy.
Yeah, Ernest, they love him. They really do. I said he and AJ Allen are the best freshmen. Ernest could see major time. I mean, I'm not. That's not my personal view. That Barrett has said that. Barrett
including special teams. Or are you talking even just?
I'm talking about playing meaningful snaps inside.
Wow, that's awesome.
Yeah, he's very He's very sharp in class and school. He's very sharp as a football player. He's up to 220, so he's got the physical attributes. But I don't know. I'll tell you what. I think there'd be a little bit of a come on. I mean, there'd be a drop off. He's a true freshman.
Well, that's interesting though too, because one of the things that I've heard multiple people say is that you want your program at the point to where you don't need to play your freshmen, right? Like because of development. But it's and it's seen a lot of people are saying, well, Nebraska is almost there to that point where they're building up the depth, whether it's through people coming back or through the transfer portal. But now we're talking about a kid that could get significant snaps as a freshman. So do you think that that's because of the depth, or is that because he's just coming in and proving to be way better than what they originally thought he was going to be, which was really good?
I don't think it's either or. I think it's a combination. I mean, they're not blessed with great depth at inside linebacker. Not bad. It's not bad. And I think Ernest is just he's advanced quickly, and he is advanced physically. I mean, if he passes the eye test. The big thing though with that position is you have to be smart. I mean, that's there's some positions that's more a requirement than others, and inside linebacker it's a requirement. You're directed traffic. So but Barrett feels comfortable with him. But man, I'm telling you, the importance of Nick Henrich and Luke Reimer can't be overstated. And I like I said, I love them. Just both those kids are like I told you, Luke played with a hip issue and a groin issue throughout last year, never said a word, had 108 tackles. He had 2 surgeries after the season. He had one right after the season, right days after the Iowa game. I think that's when he got his hip surgery. And then he went down to Houston, and it was a hernia, like a hernia type situation. So he played with a bad hip and hernia, 2 off-season surgeries. He said, I wouldn't recommend that to anybody. And he doesn't, and he didn't have the opportunity to do a lot of lifting during the off season, but he's fine. I'm excited for him because he gets to play healthy. And I think, and you know what, guys, you remember, I don't know if you remember, I remember distinctly when he was healthy in 2020, there's nobody faster to the ball on the team. I mean, and that, by the way, is an inside blitzer. I mean, he could figure into that pass rush too from the inside, delayed blitzes and stuff. He gets there extremely quickly.
It's exciting.
I guess we're getting to the very end here of the defense here, Sip, and I know we're getting close to the time.
Oh, we're good.
I guess let's talk secondary then. That's the last part of this, and we brought up, again, I'll bring up our depth chart that we have. And, we had Quentin Newsom Hill at corners. We had Farmer and Buford. Then behind them, Braxton Clark, Javier Morton, Kane Williams, the transfer from Alabama, Noah Pula Gates. Sure we're missing somebody there, or we've got – but
yeah, here's the deal. Let's see. Corners. Definitely Hill and Newsom and Braxton. And then I'd say Tame and Lynham would be ahead of Morton. Tame, not far, but there's an edge there for sure. So Tame and Lynham is forgotten. He gets forgotten for whatever reason. He was hurt a lot of last year. Man, I'll tell you what though, those little 40-minute looks at practice we get as a media corps, Lynham is a great looking corner. I mean, he's long, good corner.
And that would be a great sign for development too. That's a kid that's been in the program now for, a year. And it's nice to see guys that can, it's great to recruit the next guy, but it's also nice to develop a guy a year over year.
Well, it's going to be so important too.
Yeah. So that safety, you're right, is Farmer and Buford, but right after them, Omar Brown has moved into a top back spot in Singleton.
That was one of the other ones.
Yeah, Omar Brown and Singleton. Kane Williams came here hurt. Now he was practicing the other day, but he came here with a shoulder issue. He's a little further down. He's just a redshirt freshman. I don't think they're expecting him to come in and win a job. He's a little down the line. Noah Pula Gates is right there, but he's not. He'd be behind Omar Brown and Singleton right now. Omar Brown has made a big impression, and Singleton. Fisher said that Singleton played at a starter's level in the spring game. And in fact, Fisher said he wishes that he drove home that night thinking, God, I wish this wasn't the last practice of spring because Singleton came on. So that you got the starters right, but right behind those guys, I'm even looking at the pre-camp depth chart. Omar Brown was 2 at 1 safety. In fact, he was behind Farmer, and Singleton was 2 behind Buford. And I would say it's more pronounced now with Omar Brown. He's moved in. He's going to play. I mean, in fact, they're so good. They're right now. It's at safety, they feel there wouldn't be it's interesting. They feel like there wouldn't be much of a drop off if they went to Brown and Singleton. And even that edge discussion, one of the coaches told me, you know what, if we had to play Jamari Butler and Blaze Gunnerston, we'd be in good shape.
Mm-hmm.
That's how good they feel about that position.
Yeah, so safety and edge feeling really solid at those spots.
Oh, yeah,
right now, just depth.
Deep. Yeah, deep. Not as deep the corner, but not in bad shape. I mean, if Quentin Newsom went down, it'd be probably an issue, but not a killer.
Well, considering what they lost at safety, that's a really good feeling.
That's amazing.
Yeah. I mean, when you've lost Dismuke and Williams, you played so much. Boomer, can you bring up Jim's question again? I think Jim is trying to get you, Sipple, to say that somebody is at least the greatest freshman since someone else. So I mean, he did it at the running back spot. This time is Tommy Hill the greatest freshman cornerback since Dennard?
I don't know how to do that.
We love you, Jim.
He's not being serious.
Well, somebody commented back and said no since Deion Sanders. So
yeah,
that's
right. That's
Terrell Buckley and Sanders.
Yeah. So Jim is messing with me. I don't recognize that all the time. I don't know, Tommy. I think Tommy Hill. Tommy Hill's another of those guys that I've had a chance to interview a couple times, and there's some guys on this team. They've done a good job recruiting guys who love it. Tommy Hill just loves being a football player. And he'll be exciting. I guarantee he'll be exciting. I think you can tell him I am pretty excited. I have to rein myself in a lot because of recent seasons, and I can't get carried away in my position. But I am excited about, it's exciting talking to O'Shawn Mathis, Tommy Hill, guys like that, Stephon Wynn, Chuba, Casey's a very serious guy. And I try to emphasize to people, Casey Thompson turns 24 in October. And when you talk to Casey, you're talking to a grown man. Now, when you talk to Chuba, you're not. But the kid, but Casey's just I'll tell you one thing: pressure season. You better have a steady hand at quarterback, and Casey can handle about anything, I think.
Well, Dave, before we get to the parting shots, we have a graphic designer, Swobes. I showed a great graphic the last time you were on. This is going to be a different one, Sip, but I think it's a good way for us to kind of get out to parting shots, and that is rank the toughest road game. And so we start off right away. It's Northwestern. We're going down there to Ireland, and you'll be leaving next week. There's Rutgers, which happens in October. So if we can come back with a victory from Northwestern, we don't go on the road again until October. Then Purdue, at Michigan, and at Iowa, they're Black Friday. So
easily Michigan.
Easily Michigan.
Yeah, easily. Ann Arbor, I was talking to Sean Callahan today, and he always sings that tune that Ann Arbor is not that tough to play at because the way, I don't know, people say the way the stands slope back or something. Man, that place is loud and ornery. It's a loud, ornery place. And if it's dark, it's really loud and ornery. That's a tough place. That'll be a really hard game in November. Real hard. I mean, those are the kind of games that separate the men from the boys. They do. That game, the game that always stands out to me is when Amir took that pitch and got it, snuck into the end zone.
2013. That's the only game. That's the only time I've been to the Big House. Was that victory?
That was an ornery crowd because they were pissed at that coach. That was a bad crowd because I got stuck in the press box. I didn't catch the elevators, and I had to go through the crowd to get to the post game down. Shit, it was a mess. I had to go through the crowd. That was not good. I'm a little guy, and it didn't seem like anybody was little in that crowd. and there was a lot of F-bombs. That was a rough scene, and it was impressive, though. No, that game will be – come on now. I mean, that's going to be rough.
So Michigan –
will have done something.
So Michigan –
then Iowa, then Purdue, then Rutgers, then Northwestern.
Okay.
Purdue will be really hard. I mean, if Nebraska's going to win that game, they're probably going to have to win it close. Rutgers, Nebraska, that's an example of a game where Nebraska will have a talent advantage, Northwestern talent advantage. Even Purdue, probably a bit of a talent advantage, but if they beat Purdue, it won't be by much. won't be my most.
Hey, Dave, I want your thoughts on that. I mean, when you look at this, do you differ from that? Michigan, Iowa, Purdue, Rutgers, Northwestern, or where are you at on it?
Yeah, no, I think Sip's right on here. I mean, Michigan clearly is the most talented helmet on this graphic that Swopes did. So no questions asked. And if it's a night game, that means actually Nebraska's doing pretty well, and this is maybe a primetime matchup. So I'd take that as a good sign, but it would make it even that more daunting. Sam McEwen has had Purdue on his list. Purdue's like one of those teams that some people love them and think they're going to win the Big Ten West, and others are picking them to finish 6th. So it's the hardest team in the Big Ten West to read this year. A lot of people think they, exceeded their expectations last year, and they're going to come back to earth a little bit. The Iowa game is interesting because I think there could be if we're, get to 7, 8, maybe 9 wins, that Iowa game would be a big deal. And we are the lead-in, I believe, for the U.S. versus England World Cup game. So a lot of people will be watching sports that day. So
cool. Yeah, I don't think there's a great difference between those games at Iowa and Purdue. Those are tough, but I just put Michigan far ahead, because Michigan, to me, looks like they're going to win 10 no matter what. I think I was looking at their schedule the other day, and I think so. They'll be playing for a lot. If that's a 3:30, 2:30, whatever type game, it gets dark fast, and that place is daunting. How
I'd almost say that the toughest game for them on that. I mean, yeah, obviously Michigan's the obvious answer, but I would almost go to say the Northwestern game, because there's going to be so much pressure on them to not come out and shit the bed. And, they're going to get out there and they're going to be just thinking not to make mistakes, not to punt the ball to the wrong side of the field.
That's
not to miss field goals. But I'm making a serious point. I'm not trying to be joking here, but I think it
just sounds like
there's a lot of pressure on. Yeah, it does. But there's a lot of pressure on them to win that game. And if they win that game, then I think there's going to be a lot of good things.
I think it's a really great point. And Sip, you actually mentioned this on your radio show today, is that it's really up to Frost and his coaching staff to not, I mean, it's all business. Yeah. But if they're overthinking this and let Northwestern kind of win the head game and let Fitzgerald come in and say like, hey, we're loosey goosey because we got nothing to lose. And hey, we lost by 50 points last year. And they're just going to go out and play. And Nebraska's all wound up as tight as they were versus Illinois. And Honky, Mac, and Rob were there, and they were wound up tight. This coaching staff's got to figure this out in game 1 and get them to play at a good, consistent level.
Yeah, that whole picture, it's somewhat concerning. I mean, Northwestern they've talked about, Fitzgerald has talked about, we're going to have fun on this trip. They don't have a coach whose back is against the wall. There's not the conversation. There's much different. They're talking about going in there and having fun, but think about their psychological state of mind compared to Nebraska's. We're going to go have fun, but also we have revenge on our minds. They know they remember 56-7. So I don't like the idea of them coming in there with bounce, playing a little loose, and Nebraska having this specter, that's unfortunately or fortunately maybe that accompanies this season. I hope Nebraska's players don't feed into sort of the outside narrative. I hope they don't. It's probably beneficial that you have a bunch of new guys, new players, coaches, because there shouldn't. I hope they don't feel that, because if they do, and it's a close game late, the advantage would switch to Northwestern, I think, because one team could be playing pretty tight in that scenario.
Yeah. Well, I'll say this about the first game, and Whipple made this statement a week or so back in a press conference where he goes, the first games are more often lost than they're won.
Yeah.
And they're lost because you've made the mistake, which, I mean, that's the Illinois game blueprint from last year all over. But I just want to show this clip here real quick of Frost when he was asked about special teams, asked about the kickers the other day. And at least from being uptight, I'm seeing a smile when he talks about his punter and kicker here.
I feel great about kicker and punter right now, which puts a smile on my face to say. And I think we've got several that can do it and have been doing really well in camp. So, again, it's different when the lights are on in a soccer stadium, but what I've seen from them, we're going to be vastly improved, and having Bill Bush in that role full time where he can actually coach is making a difference too. Just having everybody on the same page and getting work at those things. So it's no secret we needed to make a lot of improvement in the special teams area, and hopefully we have.
Smartest things a guy told me over there, one of the coaches, was that, think about it. We talk about Nebraska, their inability to win close games. And think about the three of the principals involved in that. It was Adrian Martinez, who I've defended all the time, but he wasn't great in the clutch. And you had a kicker in Connor Culp that was 6 for 12 and missed 4 extra points. And the punting game. I mean, come on. Now all those 3 guys are going to be different. So that I think that there's some hope in that, just that part of the conversation. New quarterback, new kicker, new punter, and that could mean a lot in that close game conversation. They think it will. I mean, I know they think it will. I mean, come on. The kicking game killed them. I mean,
just killed them.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Sip, you've been awesome with your time here. Dave, we probably should get into parting shots here then and have Sip be the last one. So,
absolutely. Let's start with Redcast Boomer.
Well, a couple things. First off, I wanted to give a quick shout out to Associate Athletic Director friend Tyler Kai of the University of Nebraska. He was walking through the wrestling unit the other day and found that picture. So I think all loyal Redcasters are familiar with Jim Raschke. He's slowly inching his way into the consciousness of the greater university, and sooner or later we will induct the Baron into the Hall of Fame. Just a matter of time. Stick with us.
Induct the Baron. Sip,
if
you can help us at all to get Baron von Raschke inducted into the Wrestling Hall of Fame, please do.
For the Nebraska Sports Hall of Fame here at the university. We've been working on that for years.
Yeah, thanks for mentioning that.
And then finally, I know everyone was hanging on the edge of their seat. The results of the poll from last week with whether Honky and Aaron Sorensen and Rob would be getting back together for a little Star Wars and Funko Pop talk. And you'll be happy to know the yeses won overwhelmingly at 55.1% to 44.9%. So people don't hate fun, our listeners. So we'll work on arranging that maybe during an off week or something. So that'll happen in the future, folks. Yay, democracy.
I had never even heard. I didn't know what a Funko Pop was before.
I don't know.
I still don't really know. But anyways,
that makes sense why I didn't understand anything Boomer just said.
That's right.
I didn't. I couldn't follow it at all.
All right, Redcast Rob.
Well, first of all, I would just like to let listener Ken know in the comments, I am not high all the time. In fact, I've been stone cold sober since the spring game. So thank you, Ken, for that shout out. You know, my parents do watch this, so yeah, I appreciate it. I'm a 48-year-old man and still afraid of my mom. And also, Sip, thanks for coming on once again. I mean, geez, from Aaron Sorensen to you, and then now we've got some great people coming on this week as well for a couple of our fan forum shows. I think Dr. Rob is coming on, and Robbie's coming on as well. So, I mean, God, the lineup is just star-studded, and we love having you here, man. Thank you so much.
Thank you. You do got good guests coming, so I'm honored to be a part of that. For sure.
Well, hopefully you'll be texting them while they're on this show, and they'll be like, "Oh, I just got a secret text from somebody in the media that I can't say their name."
Was that obnoxious? I can be.
No, that was great. No, it was fantastic. Thank you. Just knowing that former players may be listening or watching us while we're doing this live is fantastic. We had more people watching the show live tonight than we've ever had on any show before. I should put that out.
Don't say that.
No, seriously, we had 85 people at one point watching this show live while we were doing it, and we probably have close to 200 comments. So seriously, Sip, you're a star, man. That's great. Thanks.
I'm a star. That's all.
You're the guy.
Yeah, thanks, guys.
Mac.
Again, I want to apologize for being late. That was
all right, Mac. What do you got for me?
Oh, I think Dave might be having some.
The Matrix just glitched. Anyway, I'm not going to apologize twice. But hey, we're in the fun kind of part of the season right now, folks. And for all this kind of skeptics, kind of like how I was, like, you're going to have to prove it to me first before I like anything you say. I've heard enough good things that I think it's okay to start letting in a little ray of sunshine. We only have to catch just a little bit of fire for this to go the right way.
Mag is back. Dave is kind of going in and out here, so I'll use my parting shots here. And I of course I have a few, but 3 of them. One of them I threw out this rank your top 3 Husker logos from this list. I'm just curious, Sip, if you look at these 8 Husker logos,
2 and 5.
Okay.
Give me your top 3 out of these 8.
Okay, I can do this. The top 3. God, these are
not to put you on the spot, but
no, it's fine. I always come across as such an old 8, 1, 2. 8, 1, 2. Yeah, I like that helmet. I do like that helmet.
2, that's one of my favorites.
Yeah, but I mean, really, to me, it's 8, 1, 2, 3, and then I can do without any of the other ones. 8, 1, 2, and 3.
Interesting. All right. Second off, Husker volleyball ranked number 1 in the preseason AVCA poll. So congrats there and well deserved, and hopefully they can stay up there. And last but not least, this was just a tweet, and this is good in general as we get into the season. There was a tweet the other day, and it was 2 fans at Panther. Of all things, they were at a fan fest, and they looked like they were going to get into a fight. Then Panther star wide receiver DJ Moore steps in, and he calms the situation down to break things up, respect the DJ, and he jumps up there. And I would just say this to fans in general. This is we're fans, we're fanatics, we get crazy, we get upset and frustrated and want to yell at things, but sometimes it is a good thing to take a step back. And that tweet there, it was, if you watch the video in particular, I mean, to see a guy just come up and it's like, you're at a fan fest, just settle down. We all get worked up. People get worked up on Twitter and everything, but
people get worked up for anything.
My son at school has a shirt that says #be nice. So I don't know, maybe just be nice.
Yeah, that's I like that sentiment, and I've wrestled with that over the years. But Ron Brown, of all people, a few years ago, said something that stuck with me about the way things have gone here, and that he was very adamant that the fans have a right to voice their disapproval. You guys are invested. You're heavily invested in this, and that does give you a right to voice disapproval. And I sometimes have to remind myself. Sometimes I'm a little taken aback by the level of vitriol. I guess, like I said, I'm kind of a snowflake in some ways, and I think this stuff is fun. But I got to remind myself of what Ron said. There's nothing wrong with voicing disapproval. There's been a lot to voice, so that. But I would say my part in the shot is that, but also, I think they're doing a good job over there. I think we'll see what happens. Again, it's got to be you're going to have to win close games. We'll see where that goes.
That's the question.
Amen.
All right.
Amen.
So Honky, thanks for covering me while I had some internet issues. I think I'm back.
Can I jump in before somebody?
No, it was me. It was all my fault, Sip. It's okay.
God bless.
We're all good.
Dave, live from his basement.
Yeah,
right.
You sound like you're like in the International Space Station.
I had to switch. So
we have landed on the moon.
kind of float, Dave.
Seriously, Sipple, thank you so much, though. I mean, you spent a lot more time here tonight, and I mean,
you guys
awesome.
More than I did, actually. So thank you.
Yeah, I gassed up yesterday. So. I appreciate. I really do. You guys are fun. You ask good questions, and it goes really fast. So I appreciate that.
Thank you.
Well, go for it, Dave.
All right. Well, thanks, Sip, for coming on the show. And for now, let's call that a Go Big Redcast.
Go Big Red.
Well, that's it, my babies. Looks like our glass has run dry.
I hope that hip sip with Steven Sipple got you buzzing.
Be sure to consume the Go Big Redcast responsibly. And until next time, stay hip and funky.